welcome to a special edition of MEED Live. My name is Richard Thompson. I am the editorial director of MEED, and I am absolutely delighted to be joined today by Bassam Halabi, who is the general manager for the international professional services firm GHD. Welcome, Bassam, and thank you very much for your time today. GHD this year is celebrating its 20th anniversary of opening its first office in the region in Doha in Qatar. And the past 2 decades have been characterized in this region by huge levels of investment in the built environment and in developing the economies to diversify away from oil and from fossil fuels, and also to liberalize, to open up to private sector investment. In the past 5 years, a lot of the focus of this has been on the Qatar World Cup 2022 and on the EXPO 2020 Dubai. But those events are upon us now, and a lot of those projects are coming to completion. So the big question for me, and I think for many people, is what comes next? So perhaps, Bassam, if you could just give us some of your keynote thoughts really on what comes next for the region after the World Cup.
Well, thanks, Richard. The way I see it is there are 3 main themes coming in the region. One of them is urbanization, and the transition from urbanization, from building to communities and people, the focus of this urbanization. The second theme is energy transition, and we've been hearing about it for some time now, but actually it's more solid with solid plans that they have in their 2030 vision. And the third one, which is basically investment and funding, which is a very important part of achieving the first 2 themes and getting the private sector involved in the plans for the future.
What exactly do you mean by urbanization? Is it simply people are moving to the cities and so cities are getting bigger, or is it something a bit more sophisticated about the way cities work and changing requirements?
Yeah, it's a shift actually in the mindset. So we shift from building cities to what we call it looking at the people and the communities, connecting the people and the communities, and providing what we call it a place and a space for the people to do their work, to do their rest, which is homes, and to do some activities like playing and resting. So it covers not only the city centers like it was before. It will cover the whole geography. It will cover basically the towns outside of the cities, and it is all about connecting these communities by an infrastructure. That infrastructure we mean by like the physical infrastructure, the environmental infrastructure, and digital and the social infrastructure. It's all about, focus will be about improving resilience and well-being. And that it came after the COVID-19, the impact of the pandemic on the people's lives. So resilience and well-being will be a big key factor in the way we will design the new, what we call it, future communities. And at the same time, embracing sustainability. So it's not the same as before. We are talking about integrated solutions to serve aggregation of needs across multiple communities. And I think the pillars for that kind of thinking will be focused on four themes again. Inspiring communities, create investable and inspiring space and place. Resilient communities, sustainable asset values, connected communities, connecting people seamlessly and safely, and productive communities, improve their workforce and asset performance.
Some of the cities in this region, Riyadh, Doha, Dubai, Abu Dhabi, they're very, very big cities with established networks for transport and buildings. And then we have other new cities like Neom, future city in Saudi Arabia, or the new capital city, Cairo. I'm guessing that building these new smart communities is easy in a greenfield site. But in these brownfield cities, that must be incredibly difficult.
It is. And that's where technology will come on board. Again, it's about improving. I mean, the whole purpose of that is improving the living standards of the people. And again, it's not only the space, but also the place for them to move around. And I think the infrastructure side is a big deal, really, for the brown spaces like in the old cities. And I think Nyon is one challenge is because, as I say, it's a brand new place, vast place, and how to build that kind of attraction for that destination. So again, it's a new concept in the way we think. Before we think about only building, and now we're not talking about buildings. We're talking about communities, bringing them together. Different concept.
Are your clients giving consistent messages? Are the dots being joined up between different authorities? What do you hear when you're talking to clients, and where do you see the opportunities to deliver these resilient and sustainable future cities?
Yeah, definitely. It's the same because, as I said, the region wants to change from being what I call it hydrocarbon heavyweights to advanced countries. And again, the living standards and the way, and not only for today, by the way, it's also for generations to come. This region will be a hub for the future, and I think this is what we see from everybody. We're not talking about buildings anymore, or the highest, or the tallest, or most sophisticated. They want sustainable, resilient. They want basically a destination. These cities will be destination for the world. So I think we're hearing that from everybody, really, and it's a challenge for us is actually to meet all these multiple stakeholders and needs, and that's by bringing out of the box kind of solutions, integrated solutions. And we need to cover, as I said, not only the place and the space, but also the connectivity, which is basically the infrastructure side of it.
So how much are you seeing your business change towards advising on data infrastructure and advising your clients on digital thinking?
Yeah. As I said, there are three, I believe the thing is there is a social infrastructure, how people are connected, transported, and the other one is the digital infrastructure, of course, because it's a digital technology, and technologies have been advanced, and the future, we are building cities for the future, for generations, actually. So we need to think about that, and I think there are a lot of schemes here going on about how to build these digital, and the digital world is so evolving that you cannot actually, every day is different. Look at the tools we are using, iPhones and the phones and the iPads and computers is just evolving, and there is a bigger need for data and processing this data. So again, it's challenging, but actually this is where GHD is looking to co-create, really, rather than doing it as a side, as a consultant. We co-create with the clients and using different tools. One of them is what we call it design thinking, getting everybody on board and co-create the solutions rather than we doing it independently from their clients.
What does co-creation mean in terms of relationships across these different parties?
Again, it's looking at it from a different lens, really, because we see it from the end user lens rather than from the technical side of that. So when we start the process by basically having some workshop and building trust, and then thinking about the end user of the design, get them involved at the beginning, and and step by step, looking at it from different lens. We look at it from, let's say, lens of a designer like us. We look at it from the end user. It could be for schools. It could be the kids. How the kids want to enjoy that environment. It could be the project manager, how this will be built. Instead, as I said, before we do the solution very in isolated form. But now when you wanted an integrated solutions, you have to do it this way, which is basically getting and co-create with the end user through a follow of workshops and putting everything on the table instead of this is the solution, go and build it. Now we are not doing that. We are actually more and more collaborative approach with the end users and the stakeholders, i.e. the contractors, the authorities, and the end users. We have a lot of discussions to build that design. We are not doing it alone anymore because it doesn't provide us with the integrated solutions that we want.
What are the key building blocks between now and where we want to be? Is it the 5G technology, 5G networks? Is it data centers? Is it data scientists? Is it different regulations?
Again, I think it's all of that. So one of them is digital and data technology. That's very important. We are in a digital revolution, changing the way we live. So we have to take that into adopting and applying the right technology. It's very important that you think about it, and so selecting the technology and adapting it for the purpose. Another thing I think is what we call it human-centered design. It's just basically again use the humans or the end users' thoughts about the design. So that's a concept that was never been used before, human-centered design. And again, integrated system, cross-system integration, supply chain integration. These are the key elements in building these resilient cities. Again, it's all about mindset, Richard. We need to change the mindset how we do things. We have the technology. We could have the technology, and I think it's evolving. I think it's just the mindset, how we do it. And I think the word co-creating is the right word. It talks about collaboration with the end user and the stakeholders.
What does energy transition mean for GHD in terms of business opportunities, in terms of your clients' requirements, and in terms of how the market is moving?
Listen, in a region where again we call them hydrocarbon heavyweights, we see them basically in most on the production of the energy sources, changing the way to more efficient use of the energy, and GHD have to step up as well. We are actually changing in the way we address the energy because at first what was only about how do we move from fossil-based to free carbon energy source. But that's now with the technology, that's actually old technology, and what we see the region have been basically part of what we call the International Energy Agency and Energy Transition Index. And we look at it, 120 countries are involved with that. The region is about in the 50s. So, and that is measuring the energy transition in 3 dimensions. One is the economic development and growth. One is its environmental sustainability. And one is the energy security. So it's not only one thing. It's not about only the emission side and the carbon. It's actually about, if you look at it, it's integrated. So it's economic development, it's environmental sustainability, and it's all about also energy security. So what is in the region is solar energy, renewable energy. That's one thing. That is basically about a source. But what about energy efficiency? Then that comes this electrical vehicle, for instance. That's another thing that they are investing in the region. And we are trying to, basically, we are coming up with the policies and regulations and also the infrastructure for electrical vehicles in the region. And it would be interesting how that will shape up basically the economy here. Another thing that with energy transition is actually coming a very good investment. whether it is in the region or outside the region. Because if you look at the forecast, it's about, I think it's about, they said that the renewable-based power capacity will increase to about 50% by 2024 in the world. So this is a lot of investment opportunities, and the cost for renewable energy is decreasing. So basically, and this part of the world where they have the resources, again based on the energy source that they have now, they could fund and invest in other countries in other parts of the world in the renewable energy. So I see that GHD have to be ready for that, and we are really we are exploring new ideas in terms of hydrogen, the green hydrogen, as I said, in electrical vehicles, and energy and the renewable energy like solar and wind.
The International Energy Agency says that even in the most sort of fast accelerated program of investment in renewable energy and energy transition, we still need to invest in oil and gas and fossil fuels. So do you think this is a passing phase and actually things will return to normal, or is energy transition a structural change to the way people are thinking in the region?
Yeah, again, we will need the natural gas and the hydrocarbons for at least 2-3 decades from now. But what is good about it, there is a plan to change that. So we need this because the world is not ready. We're talking about 2025, 50% to be renewable. So we still have 50% required. Another thing is the technology is not ready. It just started to be like you could store the renewable energy. Before you can't store it. It was very not cost effective to store that energy. So you need the hydrocarbon at least in 2 to 3 decades, I think, and that will help funding all these new technologies and make them more cost effective. But the world is coming there.
Yeah. Which markets do you think are going to be the ones that are really going to drive this forward and will create the sort of the momentum?
Again, Qatar is leading we call it this Energy Transition Index. It's about number 53 out of 120. UAE is about, I think, 54, 55. And then we have Saudi Arabia is coming up. I believe these 3 countries, because they have a fund as well, and these countries will go ahead and they will step up. Europe is more advanced in that because they started this journey before, but the accelerated progress here is huge, really. I mean, we are talking about this index started about 5 years ago, and all of a sudden Qatar is leading, and then Abu Dhabi, UAE, and now Saudi Arabia. They have this. These 3 countries have the 2030 vision. And actually, they are progressing towards that, and part of it is the energy transition. So I believe this region, and the good thing is about that region, we could invest in other regions because they have the funds and the means to fund in other regions, like in Africa or in South America. They have actually the means to fund, and I see that. I see some investment actually going in Eastern Europe from Qatar and from UAE. And of course, there's a partnership with China in some part of the world as well. So I think this region will be leading very soon. But again, we will continue to use the fossil-based energy for at least 2 decades. That will not change.
What are your thoughts on the potential for this region to become a hub for green hydrogen and hydrogen creation to ship hydrogen to Europe or to Asia? Is that a realistic ambition, do you think, or is that just sort of a bit of buzz at the moment and it will die down?
There is. I mean, Qatar Energy, as I have seen just before, is like they are talking about green and blue hydrogen Really, I'm not in full. I don't have all the data, but I know that there was some discussions. But they have doing a feasibility study for hydrogen strategy now, and I think I heard about some discussions and some papers going on about the blue and green hydrogen. But this is a new thing, and I think in the next 2-3 years you'll see more and more talk about it. But this is a real thing; it's not going away. But there is a huge emphasis on that. Definitely.
Well, that brings us perfectly onto your third point that you mentioned in your opening comments, which was about financing and funding future investment. You talked just now about private sector. Is that what you mean? It's the public-private partnerships and privatisation. That's the key financing issue.
Yeah, listen. I think this is very. It's a focus for many countries in the region. Is opening the domestic economy to inward investment instead of this investment going to other places. There is a huge potential for the public sector to be involved in the utilities, as I said, and the infrastructure investment. I think they started that by changing big changes in the legal framework, i.e., the PPP law, which was passed, I think, in Qatar just the last year, to encourage this investment, because we need to change that. It's not very, let's say, flexible enough to take that and encourage that. So they started that. What I saw here is that they are focusing on 6 sectors in terms of with the potential. A growth potential. One of them is manufacturing. I see a lot of focus on encouraging the private sector manufacturing. Pharmaceutical is another focus I see here. I see in Saudi Arabia. I see it here in Doha. The downstream kind of petrochemical is another focus. There's more demand for that. So it's not only the production of the oil, it's just basically the downstream petrochemical. Financial services is another thing that the private sector could get in with joint partnership with the government. Tourism is another. They are push for the private sector to take active role in the tourism. Logistics. It's a big investment required for logistic, and I see UAE have been pioneering in that, but again, Qatar and Saudi Arabia started to get more involved and push for private sector to take over logistics. Information and communication, really, it's a big focus, and there's a lot of investment required, and the government started to, encourage the private sector by providing funds for startups to get involved. So yeah, really, it's as I said, it's a legal framework. Another thing that is happening also for the private sector, the free zones, is expanding the free zones around the region. In Qatar, and of course Dubai started that from some time, and now Saudi Arabia is opening up a lot of free zones areas, and there's partnership framework that is going on. Whether it is the private sector from the region or international companies, I think that will come more and more in the next 2 to 3 years.
There is no doubt we've had a lot of success in the electricity sector with IWPPs and IPPs since the 90s. But outside of the electricity sector, we have struggled to deliver, infrastructure. Has something changed in your, do you think we're now going to see an acceleration of private finance for public projects?
Yeah, I think that, again, the legal framework was not ready, really. And I think that changed now. So there's more improvement in, the dealing between the government sectors and the private sector. I think, the government has shown leadership really by starting with these changes, huge changes. And I know because I deal with this on a daily basis. So you'll see it more definitely, because that was a barrier. Is the government procedures and the legal framework was not enough. I think with the power side, the electricity side was easier because it's, by the way, it wasn't by the public sector. It was basically private, international private owners with some funds from the government, like a joint venture, and then selling to basically to the government, which is basically the distribution of the electricity is still run by the government. Here we are talking about totally opening this up to the private sector, and even the prices as well. So it's something that it need to be changed. Another thing that is also, I think, is the consumption. We still have a high consumption of electricity and water in this region by per capita, and that is also cost. So it's like what you call a loss. So that impact. So there's some measures to manage that, and by that is what we call it private sector getting involved, user pay kind of incentives, because because it's free. It's not free. It's not as expensive as in other parts of the world. There is high consumption per capita, and that is something not sustainable, and that is something that the region started to change, getting the private sector involved and take ownership.
GHD is celebrating 20 years, and it feels to me that 20-year cycle, we've almost come back to where we were in 2001. We are seeing Qatar investing again in the North Field to expand its LNG output and exports. Qatar also has won the rights for the 2030 Asian Games, a little bit like we had in the early 2000s. So it feels to me we're at the start of a new cycle. What is your view on the outlook for this region, with all the uncertainty about the future of oil, about climate change, the impact of COVID? Where do you see the region going in the next 20 years?
Interesting question, Richard. I mean, really, when you think about it, it's 2000 when we started, 2001 to 2020. GHD is different in this 20 years. The region is different, totally different in these last 20 years. The technology is totally different. And then the guess is that the technology will change more in the next 20 years. The drivers are different. So in a way, I see it is that we will be guided by the vision, 2030 visions for the region. And that has a very ambitious goals. And I think I would say I'm very positive where we're going, because I think the region and the governments in the region, they know exactly what they want. They want to get their people involved, and they are not building their cities now for today. They are building it for generations to come. They are building it for the future. And I think, and they have the funds. They have actually the funds now to build for that. So I'm very positive about where we're going in the 20. I think there's more plans. There's more ideas coming, and also the funds are there to support that.
Bassam Halabi, General Manager for GHD, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Richard.